So, hello everyone. Welcome to JSFP Live number 3. And today we're very, very excited to welcome Nick Drury all the way from New Zealand to talk about his fascinating paper, Daruma Dolls and Solution Focused Practice. So, Nick is going to talk for a few minutes about the paper. Then we're going to split into small groups, and we won't record that bit. And then we'll come back together with questions and conversation around the paper.
In the interest of full disclosure, I've had a stroke a few years ago that's left me with a little bit of Broca's aphasia. And so sometimes I have some trouble retrieving what words I'm going to use. I Intellectually, I'm still writing papers. I'm still fully cognizant, but in presentations, I sort of sometimes get a little tripping over my words a little bit. Um, okay, so this is we're onto the slideshow now. This is the first slide. I'm going to take it that you've all read the paper, and these are some slides that I've since prepared for today's session. Um, and the paper starts off with the Daruma dolls and the one-eyed Daruma doll. And the one-eyed Daruma doll is you're meant to paint in the other eye once you've achieved your goal. That's very simply what it is. Um, and Yeah. So we'll go on to the next slide, which is Bodhidharma. He was a bearded barbarian, and he brought Buddhism. He brought a sect of Buddhism, a slant of Buddhism to China in the 6th, 7th century. And his name is not very much is known about him. He's often associated with the Shaolin Kung Fu and meditation. Anyway, one of the points there that the Shaolin people had was that you had this Tantien, as it was the fulcrum point. If you've got a human body and you look for the center of gravity, if you find the fulcrum point, it's about 2 inches below the navel on average male and a little bit lower in women. And that's where the center point is. And so what the Tantien is you're meant to be centered there, and then you would, like the Daruma dolls, you'll bounce back up as soon as you fall over. One of the few stories that's known about Bodhidharma is when he was brought before the Emperor Wu, and Emperor Wu had built hundreds of Buddhist temples and had hundreds of people converted into nuns and priests and what have you. And Bodhidharma wanted to know, I mean, what the Emperor Wu wanted to know what the merit was in that. And so he was asked, and what merit was in that. And so Bodhidharma said, none whatsoever. And the Emperor was a bit taken back by that. And he asked Bodhidharma who he was. And he says, I know not. So if you take a Spinozian view, pantheistic view, that you're just a part of the universe, not apart from the universe, you're a part of the universe. And that's called Mushin, or no mind in in Zen Buddhism, or Chan Buddhism, which became Zen when it came down the Korean Peninsula and across to Japan in the 12th century. And so there's a view amongst some scholars, Alan Watts for one, that Chan tried to put itself out of business at the when Bodhidharma got old, he and handed over his begging bowl and robe to the next patriarch. There were 6 of them, and he said, when the flower has opened all 6 petals, the flower will be fully opened. So when the 6th patriarch came into being, they tried. There's a view that they tried to close down the Chan Buddhas, tried to close down the sect, and what followed was the Tang and Song dynasties, which is meant to be the golden age of Chinese history because enough people have got the message. Right. So that's very briefly what Zen is. So Zen was also very central to SFP development because of Insu's um, Korean heritage there, and leave no footprints, which is which when that sect of Buddhism came to China, it met with Taoism, and a rich dialogue get come between the two of them, and so the leave no footprints that appears to come from Lao Tzu's governing a country is like cooking a small cook like cooking a small fish. Too much poking spoils it. You don't want to overdo it. Um, and and this has led to Evan George quoting Steve DeShazer. I haven't found it on Steve DeShazer, but I presume it is there. But politics is something you do in your private life, but not in your role as a therapist. And that I think has closed down some of what solution focused should be, ideally. Imelda McCarthy, rather, um, she's echoed the well-known feminist chant, the personal is always political, especially when you're working with those have been marginalised. And many of our cousins in social construction say it's wrong to ignore the wider social context that's driving many people are coming over the cliff up the top, and we shouldn't be down the bottom here, not cognizant of that, exploiting that, uh, you know, which I see as take a somewhat skeptical view that I see some therapists doing. Um, uh, Okay, so Eric Graham Howe, he's a very interesting character. Um, he wrote he was called the Druid of Harley Street. He was he was he was Artie Lang um, was he came into the Tavistock, um, thanks largely to Eric Graham Howe, and went out. Artie Lang also went out of Tavistock also due to Artie Lang, who couldn't handle his use of drugs, use of LSD and what have you. Um, but anyway, Eric Graham Howe, there's a very good Canadian PhD thesis on Eric Graham Howe, which I think very it's worth reading if you ever want to study Eric Graham Howe. Anyway, he had this idea that there's a difference between curing and healing. A healing has involves the whole person, and a cure is just a temporary sort of a partial um, healing. And he thought that egoic man um, um, is always looking for partial healings. Um, so, trying to make sense of that, I turned to McGilchrist, which is the next slide, which is the idea of the two hemispheres in the brain, the left and the right hemisphere. And they evolved, the left and right hemisphere, to meet all creatures have these. Every animal, every creature has this. That one hemisphere involves getting lunch, and the other hemisphere involves not being lunch. And you switching back and forth when you're watching a bird coming across my lawn. It's pecking, and then every now and again it hops. Every couple of hops it stops, looks around, then peck, looks around, and so it's going back and forth between these two hemispheres as it sort of makes sure it's not lunch and gets lunch, gets back and forth. Anyway, what part of McGilchrist's spiel is that we've become, since about 1700 or so, we've become increasingly left hemisphere dominated. We're and when you're left hemisphere dominated, you don't see change blindness. It's like you're looking at when you're pecking, when you're gauging that pecking thing. That's when you're counting the number of times the basketball players pass the ball, and you so busy doing that, you don't notice the guy in the gorilla suit come in, walks right across in the middle of the screen, waves to everybody, and then leaves again. And when you watch the tape back through and you're told to look for that, you'd swear that you're watching another tape. The first time I saw it, I thought, no, they're tricking me. They're playing a different tape. But no, it's exactly the same. And there's all sorts of things being done on that change blindness. But that when we're in the left hemisphere, we don't notice what our right hemisphere is, and it's only that the world is a safer place because we've made it so well. So that would be arguable. That we can spend so much time in our left hemisphere, and so the left hemisphere is manipulative. Um, it's looking at things and wanting to. It's McGilchrist calls it the emissary, um, the master is the right hemisphere. That's what the resting hemisphere should be. You should be mostly in your right hemisphere and then go across into the left hemisphere to do little things, and then come back to the right. But we're spending so much time in our left, we're forgetting the right. And this is the gateway to Deleuze, because Deleuze is also has the same sort of thing, and they doesn't use the language of the hemispheres. And at the moment I'm translating. I'm going through 1,000 plateaus, and from a McGilchrist viewpoint, and I'm making each chapter very, very readable. It's coming down to about 20-page each essays for each chapter of Deleuze. And so, because I think that Deleuze ought to be made available to a wider audience, because Deleuze is just impossible to read. If you tackle him straight on, you give up straight away. Well, I did, unless you can find a key to unlocking him. But McGilchrist does offer a key. But however, that's by and by. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. So I'm saying that if you're going to take this wider view, um, most SFPers are going to say, "Oh, it seems overcomplicating SFP." He says, and I would say, you're dominated by your left hemisphere, but they would come back and say, "Well, I have religious sentiments. That's where my religious sentiments come from. It's the thing, but I just don't let them intrude in my SFP work." And I said, "What if there was a way to allow them in?" And then the SFP comes, well, I probably wouldn't recognise it as SFP. Um, as we've seen, McGilchrist is not alone in calling for an integration of the two hemispheres. Um, Deleuze, Bergson, Burrow, all these people have done, albeit in different ways, have come into thing. Okay, on to the next slide. Okay, so apophasis is the show say distinction that Wittgenstein makes a thing. There's some things that cannot be said, but they can be shown, because that's like it's like you cannot name the Tao, the all, the Yawa, the flow, because the very thing of naming it, going when you apply a left hemisphere function to it, it freezes it, um, and that's not it. It's going to block the flow. So you have to go back, have to come in. So the Tao, you recognize the all or Allah or whatever you want to call it, from the right hemisphere. Um, but when you get into the left hemisphere, you actually freeze it. But so the religious sort of sentiment way of dealing with this problem was to go to apophasis, which was likened to sculpture. You'd reveal this, by chipping it away. So so in solution focus, we have a an assumption that change has already occurred, which we call exceptions. So, if you're left hemisphere dominated, you'd start looking for exceptions to the problems, and so you could build um, a solution around those exceptions you find. And so that's a little bit like it, but a little bit more on the next slide. Um, yeah. Um, so there's a parallel view in narrative therapy. When Alan Jenkins first wrote um, Invitations to Responsibility, he would look for unique outcomes, the equivalent to exceptions, and use these to leverage change. That's a complete left hemisphere, manipulation. The left hemisphere manipulates. So you'd find this exception, and then here's where I was kind to my wife the other night. I didn't hit her. So you'd find that that's a unique outcome, and so you'd use that to leverage change. What were you doing then? Da da da. Um, but after he discovered the lose, and he wrote a second book, which was called Becoming Ethical. And in Becoming Ethical, he's far more centered in the right hemisphere. So he approaches the clients um, by sharing his own personal journey with them and asking them to join him in becoming ethical. We're both on this journey. I have not, I'm not further ahead than you, but I'm just on this journey of being ethical. So we share it with each other. And so he doesn't go across into the left as much. He doesn't start from there and things. So that apophatic thing is, I think that's closer to Inso and Steve's founding vision, because Steve was a little bit influenced by Wittgenstein, and Wittgenstein was very much into the show tell distinction. Um, uh, Many languages have yes, this difference between Wissen and Kennen, I don't know, but excuse my German. The difference between propositional knowledge, left hemisphere, and knowledge gained through encounter. By we don't have this distinction so much in English. But it's biblical. We have Adam knew Eve. We say the Bible's full of this stuff and we've now got enactivism, which is all knowledge is grounded in relational knowledge. Every all knowledge is embodied at root. So what happens when it gets into the left hemisphere? It becomes digitalized and we goes very quick, but it gets out of pace by grounding it in the embodied knowledge. You have to move much slower. You're feeling out. So um, so people who are more right hemisphere, they they're far more intuitive. Um, and I've met three women in my career. I met three women who were rather exceptional with their with intuitive things. Two of them were unfortunate welfare children. They'd grown up in very bad, unfortunate circumstances, and were as teenage or young girls, they were listening to the footsteps coming down the hall each night. Um, and one was one not a third one was a trained nurse. She was the youngest of 13 girls, 13 sisters. And she had incredible intuitions. And I used to go into the room, and she was only a general nurse. And I took her in as a co-therapist because I very quickly learned that I had all this knowledge, all this thing, and I would go into the room and I'd start somewhere, and she would start a line of questioning. I think, where the hell's she going? And then I'd catch on to what the hell she's intuiting where that family, where this person was about. and I would give her the lead. Then I'd take over, and because I had the left hemisphere knowledge. But she was incredible doing that. So um, so you'll see I've filled in the other eye up in the corner there, up in the top right-hand corner. Okay, and the last thing is just this little thing. This is from Spencer Brown, Laws of Form, if you know it. The mathematicians, um, they don't they they set out to prove correct hypothesis, but they don't, that very seldom do they actually attempt to prove any statement that he's not already convinced of the truth. So as he hasn't proved it yet, where that conviction must arise from somewhere else. He must have an intuition deep down that this is the correct thing to do. And it's the same with what the right hemisphere thinking that starts out the whole, and it's sort of that's what the gift is that we're going to take to solution focused to become more adept. And so I'm calling this apophatic solution focused therapy. It's because it brings in, much to the chagrin of the brief people, the intuition, the relationship, those things there, which they downplay the importance of. They upplay the importance. They're very important. So this is just sort of like some thinking in addition to what's in the paper. Um, so now I'll stop now and let you. Thanks,
Okay,
Mark.
thank you so much, Nick. That is indeed a fascinating extra piece that helps us, I think, understand some of the arguments that you're putting together. So the recording is now started. Kirsten, hello. Please,
Yay.
hey, nice to see you. Far away. What question or a comment do you have for Nick?
I think I'm very glad that Nick wrote the paper, and I'm also very glad that Nick presented what he presented today, because I mean I've been thinking similar things, as in if we take away that there is two individuums, one the helper, whether the other the helpee, um, one doing interventions to help the other person. What how does it look in a philosophically more correct, I mean correct, incorrect, but more consistent version? And I think Nick is pointing to some very, very interesting concepts here of I think Deleuze, or maybe also Merleau-Ponty, could be interesting to see if we take away this self meets self, we would have to look very much more in onto structure, onto field, rather than what is happening between people and how to optimize this, which then also takes therapy or helping professions out of the I am going to fix you, which then again opens up to political activism or changing the environment so that someone doesn't have to be suffering from insufferable surroundings. So I think for me, it's very coherent and very, very useful. So thank you, Nick. It's just a comment, not a question. I'm sorry. Maybe the question is, do you agree or am I confused?
No, no, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So David has a question in the chat. To goal or not to goal may be the most difficult decision for SFPers in real time and in context. To goal or not to goal, as Shakespeare didn't say. What do you think, Nick?
I'd have to think about that for a while. Um, the goal comes up between us, it comes out of the conversation. I would imagine that it would come up at different times in different conversations. I think that if you're looking for using it as a lever, that would be an error. It's a bit premature. Um, I'm thinking about um, how Alan Jenkins gets it in that becoming ethical. Um, he's working with the most violent and the most obnoxious men, and he's inviting them. Well, he has these conversations with them where he's on a shared journey with every one of them, um, even though some of them don't want to be on a shared journey when he first meets them. Um, and I imagine that somewhere along the way, the goal arises. Um, like some of those men are in complete denial when he has first conversations with them. Um, I had a terrible childhood. It's no wonder I'm so bloody violent and you know.
Okay. So Kirsten says agency is not owned but circulating. Language as a terrain rather than the tool. Identity as situational, temporary, negotiated. And it's all part of the interactional view, I think, that's what you were
Yes,
talking about there. And of course, that
yes,
goes back further than Steve and Insu. That's the MRI,
yes.
wrote a whole book about the interactional view. But they had and they were very interested in what happens in between people. What they did.
Yes, but
Kirsten,
they were also very very kind of toolsy
yes,
and I individual identity oriented.
yes, yes.
So I think it was a step forward, but I think Deleuze is much more interesting. That's really really cool inspiration.
Well, Nick is working on a paper about Deleuze and solution-focused practice, which has been peer-reviewed, and he's thinking about the comments that he had. I don't think I'm sharing anything out of school here, um, and we are looking forward to seeing that because it's time that we took some of these things on. Um, so Konstantinos says, "Leave no footprints. Tread in the ever-flowing river of the client's reality." Well, yes. So the river is ever flowing, but so is the client. I think I'm reminded of the ancient Greek whose name temporarily escapes me, who talks about not stepping in the same river twice. The river
Heraclitus.
changes, but also you change as well. It's not just the flow of the client; it's flow of you and flow of everything. I think we
Yeah.
can't
Uh,
say.
yeah, leave no footprints. I was thinking of it like that's why you leave no footprints.
Okay, Nick.
Yeah. It's going back to the governing fry like a cook, like a country like a small fish. Don't overdo it. It's quite good of Lao Tzu to say that. Um,
It was Heraclitus, wasn't it?
It was. Of
Heraclitus.
course
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was,
Heraclitus.
David.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you
Heraclitus.
for reminding me. Yes, yes, it was. So the point is not that the river is flowing, it's that it's changing all the time, it's that you're changing all the time as well.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
any of you familiar with Barrett? Um, the um, the quantum physics idea, and she has the interaction. The interaction, instead of looking at the relator, you start with the relationship. The relationship is in the middle, and everything and the relator are produced by the relationship. And that's where our thinking is going to change. We have to become more relationship focused and less relator. Um, and that's Barron's quantum physics.
What's the other name of Ms. Barron, so we can go and follow her up?
Barrett, Barad.
Oh,
Karen,
Karen Barrett.
Karen
Barrett.
Barrett.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Her book is very, very, very good. Not easy going sometimes, but Meeting the Universe Halfway, I think, is the
Yes,
the title of her big book. Very impressive. And again, I think there's definitely some stuff there that we should be taking account of, because that's kind of moving well past the simply social construction. It looks at how that engages with, if you like, proper science, said the recovering physicist. So very, very interesting. Yes.
What I find fascinating is, oh, sorry, Anton, go.
No.
It's just that the change in stance of the practitioner,
Yes.
if we take this seriously, is huge. Shut up, Anton.
Well, we also had it before we have Anton. Wouter de Kock from Belgium had a thing in the chat. Is listening with a constructive ear an example of apophatic SFP? He says, I learned about this today in my SOF training. Catching people on what they are doing well already. Listening with a constructive ear. What do you think, Nick?
I think that happens, but I'm still sorry, Kirsten. I'll come back to McGilchrist's two hemispheres. Listening with a constructive ear is listening for something, which is left hemisphere. Listening with the right hemisphere, you're just open to everything. McGilchrist rubbishes the previous researchers that have gone into left and right hemispheres. He says, most of what's been written previously is nonsense. So yeah, which would probably be what your skepticism is about, Kirsten. Yeah, but when we're right hemisphere, we're open to the universe. We're open to spirituality. We're very receptive. And when you first pick up, if you read Alan Jenkins' book, when you first pick it up, you're going to struggle with it. I did, first of all, and I put it aside. And in fact, a very funny incident. I came upon the book reference. I must read that. And so I went and interloaned it out of the library. I didn't realize I had it in my bookcase, and one day I was looking for I was looking for laws of form. No, I've got that here. So I went over and looking through my bookcase, and hello, there I find Becoming Ethical. I had the Alan Jenkins book all the time, and I'd put it down. I'd put it aside because it was too difficult. But after reading some of Deleuze and what have you, I was coming back to that, and I could understand it better. And especially after reading McGilchrist, I could then relate to it far better. It was understandable.
Thanks. Anton, did you have a question or comment?
Well, yes. Thank you, Nick, for your presentation and your article. It reminded me of something I heard Steve DeShazer say in a lecture he once gave, and the lecture was Ways Words Work, and he said most Western therapists have been indoctrinated into this idea that somehow what we are doing has some relationship to science. I remember Bill O'Hanlon saying, Steve says, the biggest mistake the therapy business made was getting itself tied up with psychiatry and psychology. And then he adds, I think there's a lot of truth in it, Steve says. For me, it's like an art. So, and when I've recently had some conversations with people who were admitted in psychiatric hospitals for a while, yeah. And they said that there was a big difference between talking to therapists who were applying theories, so to speak, and not talking to them, but trying to interpret everything that they said. And those therapies that were really talking to them and having conversations. Does that fit with your
Yes.
the things that you were saying here, Nick?
Yeah, but that's exact. I belong to Mad in America, always have. Um, and that's what Eric Graham Howe was about. He very much ran with that. Yes, as Kirsten says, thinking with rather than thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or what Levinas also says,
Yes, Levinas. Yes.
It's talking to a client or to another person, not about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that lecture, The Way Words Work, is available on. It used to be on a cassette. I've got it on a cassette tape or 2 cassette tapes. It is out there. I believe there are digital copies around. Although we were trying to at one point to publish it as an essay rather than a tape, but the people who had the rights to it weren't keen, unfortunately, because it's very, very fascinating. Very fascinating.
I have a digital copy, Mark.
Steve at his best, I think, in that thing. Very fascinating. Just thinking about Nick referred to the brief people once or twice tonight. I think they're perhaps a little bit more on this than they let on sometimes. I remember seeing Steve DeShazer being asked questions, and he would reply, "It's all about technique," very loudly, and then he would turn away. And as he turned away, he would mutter to himself, "And it's nothing to do with technique," which is this kind of trying to hold the two things.
Yes.
And I think what he meant by "it's all about technique" was there's nothing else. There's what you do. There's what you do. But what you do has kind of, if you like, levels and layers. What you're doing might be viewed in a very small sense in terms of what question are we asking, exactly how are we phrasing it. But there's a much bigger frame around it, which is to do with this kind of being open to everything and not knowing about where we're going quite a lot of the time and seeing what happens. And that's not an easy thing to pull off, at least to start with. And I think that's one of the things you learn as you learn SF over months and years. That's one of the things that you come to. That's my thought, anyway.
Yes, you're far more vulnerable. I said about Alan Jenkins when he adopted Deleuze, he made himself far more vulnerable because he would identify with these men. He would share his journey. He wasn't, and he was remarkably ethical, I thought.
Oh, we must follow. I'm not a name I'm familiar with, so we'll follow that up. David has a question in the chat. Do psychiatry and psychology belong mainly with the left hemisphere? What about therapy and SFP?
Oh.
I'm sure Nick will be back. Normal service will be resumed in just a minute.
Normal service has been resumed.
So, psychology and psychology, are they mainly left hemisphere, is David is asking?
Well, it appears to me they're mostly left hemisphere, they're mostly manipulative. What do you think, David? You're the person who's read the most of anyone I've ever known.
I would say psychiatry and psychology mainstream, definitely yes, but there are exceptions. I mean, people like Harleen Anderson, there's no way I could ever say that she was a left hemisphere writer or thinker. But I worry sometimes about therapy and SFP as being an expectation that if you say certain phrases, you'll get certain responses. And that kind of pseudo-scientific approach worries me, I think. I think that one of the things I've learned working voluntarily in a mental health support group with adults is that they react very badly to any kind of therapeutic question I ask, especially a solution-focused or solution-oriented question. What I discovered is that I have to talk about myself and about my own struggles, and that is the way that I get acceptance from the group.
So that's like being a peer with the group, really. In that
Yes, it is. It's about joining them.
Yeah. And that's a powerful way to begin in any kind of setting, maybe. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we've just got a couple of minutes left. Chance for any final questions, reflections, or whatever.
I'd like to thank you all.
Well, I think we'd like to thank you, Nick, and for not just for this excellent paper, but for all your contributions over the years. And I hope we're going to be seeing some more of them. If anyone hasn't seen Nick's 2 papers on Wittgenstein and solution-focused therapy, which were published in the early days of the journal in 2014-15, and they're still available on the website right now for free, of course, as all our stuff is. They are absolutely tour de force, I think, of wisdom and very well written and very clear. So that's well worth picking up. And so, Nick, thank you so much indeed for coming to join us at breakfast time where you are. Thank you very much to everybody else for coming along. I hope this has been interesting and useful. This video will be on our YouTube channel. And I'm hoping that we will have more events in the JSFP Live series. Now, of course, we'll let you know about that. I will email everyone who registered for this call with the recording link, but it will be available on our YouTube channel as well. So we're going to wind up now. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all for coming, and we'll wind it up here. And thanks to everyone, particularly I know quite a few of you very well, but there's some new friends joining us as well, and that's great to see you too. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Cheers now.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Mark.